I'll call this meeting to order. And I'd just like to make an announcement that Committee of Whole meeting is canceled for September 24th. And as well, does anybody have anything to add to the agenda? I've just got one to add in camera, labor discussion. So, and we went from summer, no, we went from winter to summer and summer to winter. So our poor public works guys, I feel for them that they're not, Mother Nature's not giving them time. So please be patient with our guys out there, guys and gals. So could I get a motion to adopt the agenda? Tony, Lisa, comments? All in favor? Carried. 5.1, adoption of the regular minutes of September 4th. Motion, Lisa, second, Fred, all in favor? Carried. And we'll get right into our delegation. So I'd like to welcome Keith Ryder, the Executive Director of the Red Deer River Municipal Users Group, and to give us a presentation on protecting source water.
Thank you very much, Mayor Kohlberg, councillors, senior administration staff. I'll go through just a bit of quick background on the Red Deer River Municipal Users Group. In November of 2003, the Government of Alberta released the Water for Life Alberta Strategy for Sustainability and Water-Related Issues. And their three pillars were safe, secure drinking water supply, healthy aquatic ecosystems, reliable water supplies for a sustainable economy. And both the AUMA of the day and what is now the Rural Municipalities of Alberta Association recognize that municipalities have a key role in water management and protection of water quality through responsible land use planning, environmental conservation, and managing municipal water systems, including wastewater and stormwater. With these goals in mind and the provincial water strategy in mind, the Red Deer River Municipal Users Group was formed. It began actually in this very space, which was then your meeting room above the library, with Mayor Paul Ainskoff of the day, myself as mayor up the road in Stettler, City of Red Deer, and other interested municipalities, recognizing that there were some concerns within the Red Deer River Basin that the municipal perspective needed to be addressed. And the Red Deer River Municipal Group was formed to provide a forum for municipalities to discuss water supply, water use, water quality, and to serve as an advocate of municipal interest in the supply, use, delivery, and quality of water. And through the years, it's evolved that the Red Deer River Municipal Group, MUGS as we're shortened our name, has taken an active, proactive approach to water-related issues on behalf of municipalities. And one of our most recent projects that started in 2015, and this is, unfortunately, we had an overlap of the election and a new council, so a lot of this is brand new information for several of the new councillors. And in 2017, we embarked on a fairly extensive action plan to deal with water quality and source water quality protection. And part of our mandate was to prepare a toolkit as well as a water primer. I've got hard copies of those I'll leave with Linda, and if you can use them, fine. If not, I'll pick up the rest when we meet here on Thursday for our regular bi-monthly MUGS meeting. But the toolkit addresses 21 threats, and these threats were identified by members of the MUGS group, both continuous and periodic, to source water and source water quality protection. And the impact of these threats trigger stress to aquatic and human communities and activities within the Red Deer River Basin. So as we went through, we held three fairly extensive workshops this past spring. One was in Olds, one was in Hanna. Councillor Garbutt attended the one in Hanna, and one in Lacombe. And all of the municipalities within the Red Deer River Basin, whether they were MUGS members or not, whether they are currently getting their water from the Red Deer River, or not, we felt it was important to involve all of them in source water quality protection. And we had very good turnout, and the workshops were well received, and we continued through that. And that's what, in just a real Reader's Digest version, where we're at today with the workshop and the toolkit that was prepared to go along with the workshop. Now, what was part of the workshops and after they were completed, as a follow-up, the group had prepared what was called a charter. And that's what was sent out. You have that in your package. A charter for protecting source water quality within the Red Deer River watershed. This wasn't designed as a tool to introduce unmeaningful work. And certainly MUGS realizes the workload that all of council's administrations have, especially this year. You're dealing with cannabis bylaws, short construction period. But what the charter is an opportunity to create an educational vehicle on source water quality protection. It's a lens to look at your overall conservation and water protection within the Red Deer River Basin. It's not something that is an event that's just going to happen now and be done in October. It's a long process that gives all of the municipalities an opportunity to promote source water protection. So what we've asked is, realizing that all municipalities have systems and policies and procedures in place for water protection, this provides an opportunity to look at any new actions that municipalities may take. At the workshops, there's included in the package, there was several of the 21 threats and risks that were identified. All of the participants were given an opportunity to provide their input on whether these were not applicable to their particular municipalities, if they were already ongoing, or if there were issues that could be looked at. Now, these involved everything from threat number one, and these weren't in any specific order. And the interesting thing, our group is made up of rural and urban members. So there wasn't a real split between the urban and the rural. We found that some of the items that we had anticipated would be strictly rural were supported and brought up by urban members, and vice versa. So these dealt with climate change, drought, floods, wildfire impact, recharge, and on all the way waste disposal, snow storage, road salt, farmland runoff, sand and gravel operations, loss of woodlands and wetlands, off-highway vehicle activity, and irrigation return flows. Once those were done, the participants in the workshop were given a document to fill in on what threats and risks they would like to recommend to their CAO and to their fellow councillors on areas that they could proceed and work on. So the letters were sent out. There was 2 letters with the charter. One was sent to all of the members and resident municipalities within the watershed who had participated in the workshop. And another letter, which was a little bit more detailed, was sent out to all of the municipalities within the watershed who were unable to participate in the workshops. In those letters, we provided a little bit of background and references to the actual workshop documents and to the summary tools and handles that were provided at the workshops. And that's basically what you have in in your package today. So the purpose of the workshop was to summarize, the report was to summarize the priorities identified by all of the participants in it, and to discuss the threats that municipalities feel could and should be addressed by their regional and sub-regional basins. Now, with Drumheller being at kind of the end of the Red Deer River watershed, as far as intake goes, some of your concerns may be related to wetland preservation and wastewater treatment, runoff, and similar actions such as that. The main purposes that we embarked on was to broaden and improve an understanding of the importance of the quality of source water within the watershed, clarify the values of the watershed with a regional approach, identify many of the threats to the quality of source water within the watershed, and those are all within the toolkit. In view of time, I won't read them all, but it gives you an opportunity by taking the charter document that we had sent out, and this again, it's hopefully thought of as a tool that you can use, and as I mentioned, a lens to look through and have a look at the toolkit and other documentations. And if there are some actions that as a council that you feel that you can take that are worthwhile in promoting source water quality protection, it's a great opportunity by signing the charter and using it as a media event. And what this would do is, and what we've tried to do as an organization, is to create education within the community on the importance of water quality protection in everyone's daily activities and their private life. So if you look at it as an educational tool, not as something that's going to create extra unmeaningful work, but as a tool to get the information out that source water does need to be protected, I think basically that's the end result that we'd be looking for. And that's Madam Mayor, that's a very quick summary of what MUGS has been working on with the Water Quality Action Plan, and specifically the toolkit and the charter that we sent out. So I'd be pleased if anyone has any comments or questions.
Well, thank you very much, Keith. Sorry, that was a very good presentation. Comments? Jay?
Thank you, Your Worship. So, Keith, I think it was 2 days after the workshop, or at least the next business day. I think we met on a Thursday. I saw the CAO on the Monday to review the workshop, and we went through the package and the threats. And I think it's fair to say that because this community is spending an inordinate amount of time on our flood mitigation strategies, that that's where it's stopped. We certainly had a chance to go through these things in further detail, but the reality is that I'm very reluctant to try to add things to the bucket as far as strategic priorities go mid-year. And so when we talk, the ones that jumped out, you'll remember at the workshop for me, and I was surprised how many river communities weren't as equally concerned, were of course flood management and what would be A and B of that is the flood mapping and floodplain management is the #1 priority in this community. The second would be the other side of that coin in drought preparedness, and the third would be the climate adaptation plan. So to add those, those last two in a meaningful way for the remainder of corporate 2018 has not happened, and I'm not sure it's going to happen. So I'm personally not convinced that we can meet your timeline of signing by October 1st, as the recommendation was in the letter, because I don't, council won't even have a chance to meet again formally to decide on whether or not those are the agreed upon priorities, because again, at this point, only the CAO and myself are even aware of the information.
Thanks, Councillor Garbutt, and those are very fair comments. And the dates, and as I mentioned, in the process are, if you look at it more as an aid or a tool, hopefully that will be more important than the dates. The dates kind of slipped by, to be honest, because we were waiting for the letters to get signed by our co-chairs, and they were written quite some time in advance. And if they would have gone out at that time, October 1st would have been realistic. I don't think anyone's going to hold October 1st as a carved in stone date.
Good to know, because I don't think we're going to make it.
I think there's 3 municipalities that have signed but it's not designed to create extra work or to.
Yeah.
And then remember, it was brought forward by the
agreed.
members.
And it is on our radar, without
yeah,
question, Keith.
and
You
I
know
think
that.
that's-
You know that as a river community, as a flood community, we are
Exactly, yeah.
absolutely committed to these things. But the degree to which flood protection in particular has overtaken our local resources, particularly what's going to be the last half of this year, is, well, it's unprecedented in a non-high water event year in my time on council. So just to be fair, I wanted to make sure you understood where we're coming from. Doesn't minimize the importance of it at all, just a capacity issue.
And that's going to be acknowledged at our meeting on Thursday, the 20th here.
Perfect.
That's going to be acknowledged, and if we have to change the dates, hopefully that's not a barricade or.
I just don't like being non-compliant with things.
No, thank you.
Anybody else? Well, thank you again, Keith. I appreciate you taking the time to
Okay,
come and help
thanks, Mark.
clarify for some
And
of us.
I'll leave some, if I may, some of the toolkits and primers with Linda.
Absolutely.
And if they're not picked up, I'll pick them up on Thursday so that they're
Alright.
not discarded or shredded.
Wonderful. Thanks again.
Thank you very much. Thanks for your time.
Alrighty. Well, we'll get just set up here for 6.2 Alberta Culture and Tourism update on the business survey.
Work.
Okay.
Thank you, Your Worship. My name is, and Council and senior members of administration. My name is Bruce Tanis. I'm Director of Business Development and Investment Attraction for Alberta Tourism. Today I've also brought two team members with me, Cody and Alexis, who are both development officers for this particular area, one in the business development side, the other on more of the community tourism development side. So I would like to take a little bit of time to speak about a project that we undertook with partners here in town. It's called the Tourism Industry Business Retention and Expansion Project, and we piloted it here in Drumheller. We had some excellent partners with Drumheller here with the Chamber of Commerce, Travel Drumheller, and with Julia from the town. Excellent partnership with this particular project. So without further ado, I'm going to take a few minutes and talk a little bit in general on the tourism industry, about Alberta's tourism economy, some observations about tourism in Drumheller, a little more on the tourism industry business retention and expansion project, which I will from now on call TIBER. It's a little easier to say than that other mouthful. And some results in terms of what we see as some strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, and some potential next steps coming out of the project. So let's talk a little bit about what is tourism. There's a couple of academic definitions up there, but as a general rule, anyone traveling 40 or more kilometers for business or pleasure to a new destination for less than a year is considered to be a tourist. there are a number of activities and industries that are associated with tourism, and tourism is actually an industry of industries. So that includes accommodation, transport, attractions, retail, F&B, food and beverage. So a number of different industries are touching on tourism. Globally, tourism is one of the fastest growing industries in the world. It currently sits at about 10% of the world's GDP. It's 1 in 10 jobs. It's 1.4 trillion in U.S. exports, 7% of the world's exports, and 30% of the service exports in the world. So a massive industry, and certainly one of the fastest growing. The other thing that's growing fast is the number of people who are traveling around the world. Every year that number increases, and particularly as more and more of the world becomes into that middle class section, if they're able to afford to travel further and further abroad. So some of the top world's tourism spenders, China has become the top spender now. USA, Germany, UK, and France. All these ones are key markets for Alberta and for Canada. And you can kind of see here, United States, of course, being our top international traveler, UK being next, and then China. But if you look at spending, China is actually now number 3, which I've been in the tourism industry as an operator and now in government for a little over 20 years. And China was nowhere on the radar just even 15 years ago, so kind of amazing. Economic impact in Alberta, $8.1 billion in visitor spending in 2015. That number is just under 9 now, but we have to use Stats Can numbers. $9.3 billion in Alberta's GDP. And you can see it contributes 127,000 full-time direct and indirect jobs, and there are 19,000 tourism businesses. Now, most visitors in Alberta are other Albertans, and you'll see that later with your own statistics as I show those. But a significant number are from United States and other parts of Canada and overseas, and those types of travelers tend to spend a little bit more than travelers that are close in. If you kind of think about your own spending habits, when you go on a short vacation, you're less likely to spend as much money per day and go to fancy restaurants and buy more souvenirs than when you're further away, and that's pretty typical of just about all kinds of travelers. Now, how do I get out of this? Just going to play a little video here, kind of illustrates my point. Uh-oh, we didn't think about that. How do I do that? How do I do this? Somebody help me. We should have done that. Okay. Okay. I'll leave it to the professionals. Okay. That's all the way up. That is all the way up.
Further reaching than most realize. For example, the meals ordered in hotels and restaurants across the province come. When tourism works, Albertans work. Tourism is one of the world's fastest growing industries and vital to Alberta's diversifying economy. Whether coming from around the world or around the province, every traveler spends money. And a little bit of every dollar spent travels to every corner of the province. It's what we call the visitor economy, and it generates $8 billion a year. The tourism industry is an industry of industries, further reaching than most realize. For example, the meals ordered in hotels and restaurants across the province come from professional chefs and bakers. These chefs, trained in local schools, are creating dishes using fresh ingredients grown and raised by Alberta producers. Like the cocktail that came before dinner. It was made with gin from a local distillery, a distillery that was built by local tradespeople, creates local jobs, and now buys local rye, wheat, and barley from surrounding farmers. These farmers have another market for their crops, and in turn buy fuel and equipment and create jobs, all of which helps keep Alberta's rural communities working. This example is just a taste of how the tourism industry benefits over 19,000 businesses. From the fields of our farmers to the glamour of center stage, over 127,000 Albertans find employment as a result of the visitor economy. For every job we see in tourism, there are hundreds we don't. For every skier, an industry keeping the hills up and running, safe and well-maintained. For every helicopter ride, there's an industry that includes pilots and mechanics and flight training professionals. From administrators to housekeepers, lighting technicians to building maintenance, tradespeople to truckers. Albertans are working with every visitor. For a stronger Alberta economy, tourism is a growing opportunity. Not only in driving revenue for the province, but by contributing to the vitality of our communities.
When tourism works, I work.
When tourism works, I work.
I work. I work. I work.
I work. I work.
I work. When tourism works, we work.
When tourism works, more Albertans work.
I think the film says it a lot better than I can. So, all right. So let's go over some stats from Drumheller. So Drumheller belongs to Census Division 5, which is an artificial division set up by Stats Canada, but we've pulled some statistics based on Division 5. We will be sharing after the presentation. Julia's going to send the report. So I'm going to go through some of these slides rather quickly rather than dwell on every last piece of the statistic. You will have it for your reference at a later time. I'm trying to be cognizant that you have many things to do. As you can see, though, visitation in Census 5 is fairly consistent, around 750,000 people, and you can kind of see what the spending is on same-day visits versus overnight as well. If you look locally, of course, you know your own population around 8,000. And the median age is a little older than the provincial, same on the female side, and there's average household incomes and those kinds of statistics there, which you should be familiar with from your economic development. This represents a bit of what we normally consider your local trading area for tourism is about an hour and a half. If you look, we drew a bit of a map around Drumheller, and it intersects through Brooks, Calgary, basically Red Deer, and area. So that's considered to be your local marketplace, and that'll be important here in a few minutes when we show you some stats. Here's some statistics from the Royal Trail, which kind of caught me by surprise, quite frankly. There's 489,000 visitors a year going to the Royal Trail, so that represents a certain number of folks who are coming through your town, whether they come into town or not. They are actually visiting the trail, and there's a bit of a breakout as to where they come from. From Canada, 88%, US 3.3%, UK, Germany, Australia. So kind of mirroring to a certain degree those larger statistics. Digging down a little bit, most of them are Albertans, of course. then British Columbia and Ontario. If you look at your top visitations from close in, within that trading area, 41%, Edmonton at 19%, and then further out beyond that in Alberta. Interesting enough, we got some statistics from the world's largest dinosaur. You're looking at just under 130,000 people going to that center, and then Visitor Information Center about 60-ish. And then the Atlas Coal Mine, just as an example of other attractions in the area, at around half again, 30,000. Here are some Nihil County statistics in terms of where visitation comes from as well. So the Tiber project, why Tiber here? The purpose, so basically Tiber is a business retention and expansion program. That's a pretty standardized economic development tool set that a lot of towns and municipalities use. But this one is designed specifically for tourism. And we assess the health and intentions of the businesses with the intention of identifying issues and opportunities for the tourism industry. And as I mentioned, there's quite a few visitors already coming to town, either to the trail or to the world's biggest dinosaur. So when we put together this project, we put together with our partners, and from that we looked at a number of different lists of businesses and came up with 108 tourism businesses based on the definition that I shared with you earlier. That represents approximately 25% of your business licenses issued in the town. We did pick off a few businesses that were in the area as opposed to just in the town. It is a fairly mature industry, which is interesting that we discovered that 70% of the businesses that were surveyed had been in operation for 10 years or more. And we ended up interviewing 87 out of 108. Not everybody agreed, so that's a little bit better than 80% that agreed to do this. And those 87 businesses employ 600 people in high season, and we estimate that that represents those 87 businesses have about $15.7 million annually in payroll. So not an insignificant industry for Drumheller in terms of payroll, taxes, businesses, those kinds of things. So as I mentioned, our project committee included the town of Drumheller, Drumheller Chamber of Commerce, Tourism, Drumheller, and we had a number of other economic development organizations help us, like Community Futures, etc. And Alberta Culture and Tourism played a bit of a supporting role here. We did a lot of the background work. So the Tiber program involves various stages. So the start is to go out and visit firms, which was done by volunteers from Drumheller and a few voluntold. They collected data, they visited with the individual business people. We got the data that we're sharing with you, and then in some cases, some of the businesses needed a follow-up. They were having an issue, and we followed up with those businesses. Either it was an issue in retention, or potentially they would like to expand and they needed some additional help. And this is the reporting stage, so we're at the point where we're providing a report to you guys and to the public here in Drumheller. And then the last stage is reflection, which we're going to talk about some ideas that we got around that. So as I mentioned, we recruited volunteers. We collected the data. That was back in March and April. Is that right? March and April this year. And so we have As I mentioned, we invited 108 businesses, 87 agreed, that's 81% response rate. We had 19 volunteers, and they put together 219 volunteer hours. So we were very lucky to have such good volunteers, put a lot of hours and work into this. So we asked, what is the nature of your business? You can see the various types of businesses: accommodation, food and beverage, and entertainment, travel, service, retail, and the breakout there. Here you can see a fairly mature business market, quite a few people owning their businesses for longer than 10 years. The majority are, of course, corporations and sole proprietors, which isn't all that surprising. What was surprising was the number of micro businesses that you have here in Drumheller. A number of them less than 100,000 in sales. I personally, having operated businesses before, I kind of expected to see more in that 100 to 250, 250 to 499. So it was quite interesting to find that it was skewing quite towards those micro businesses at 100,000 or less. Most of the businesses attributed at least about 75%, give or take, of their revenue to travel and tourism. So they are definitely tourism businesses. The majority of the businesses, about 80%, were open full-time year-round, with 20% being seasonal businesses. And you can see that the season obviously is summer. Majority of, so this is the business owners telling us where the revenue is coming. They attributed 57% to, local, that's 1.5 hours, which, seems right to me. 21% to Alberta, and then rest to Canada, international, etc. And here are the average number of full-time and part-time. So the average is, 3 full-time and about 2 part-time for year-round businesses. And then going up again in the summer, obviously. Average seasonal payroll costs bi-weekly. So we kind of asked, how was your last year's performance in 2017 compared to previous years? And did your sales go up? Did they go down? Did your profits go up? Did they go down? Did you hire more people? Did the number of visitors go up and down? So you can kind of see the majority of the businesses reported that their sales went up, their visitors went up, and their profits kind of went up. It was pretty even between those who went up and those went down on the profit side, which is interesting. Employment seems to be pretty steady in 2017. We also asked them what was their expected performance, and so remember we were asking in the spring before the biggest part of the season. It'd be interesting to see what actually happened, but everybody seemed to think that the number of visitors would go up and the number of sales, the amount of sales would go up and profits would go up, but they weren't going to hire anybody or weren't going to hire as, in terms of number of employees, going to be pretty steady for the most part. A few said that they would increase their employee level. This is an interesting statistic. 44% said that they would consider expanding in 2018 or 2019. So there is an opportunity that these business people are seeing or are hoping to see that would cause them to want to reinvest. So these are the types of expansions that the ones that said they wanted to expand would do. Renovations, new facilities, new products, etc. For those who said that they wouldn't expand, here are the top reasons why they said they wouldn't expand. A number of them said the business was at capacity, which is interesting, and they didn't see that it would be worth it for them to expand, and that would be the first and second one, basically. A few other causes there too. Most people were pretty happy with being in Drumheller, and none of the, so you could see that there's only a few people that are considering selling, closing, moving. The majority were going to stay pat. But those who were planning to move, sell, or close, if they were moving, it was most likely going to be within town. If they were closing, it was most likely because they were thinking of retiring. And that kind of goes along with that mature business climate that is here in the tourism industry. So that's a potential issue come the future. Drumheller, we asked whether Drumheller as a community supports tourism as a business. You can see that it kind of skews towards the yes side of that equation, with 5 or more being on the yes side and less than 5 being on the no side. So 8 seems to be, fairly strong yes. Is it easy to find and recruit and retain good quality staff in Drumheller? And you could see that most of the businesses felt no, or at least neutral to no. So that's an issue that needs to be addressed. I would like to work with the town of Drumheller and travel Drumheller to work on promotional pieces for Drumheller. So by and large, that answer is a strong yes. So we've done some thinking about what some of these results mean, and some of the ones in the report that I didn't necessarily highlight today. I think we have strong business community support for tourism, especially with the ones that we interviewed. You have some strong, what I would call anchor attractions in the Royal Trail, Atlas Coal Mine, Rosebud Theatre, and I called it the big T-Rex dinosaur, sorry. The world's biggest dinosaur. High visitation are already coming here. So you have over 490,000 visitors coming each year. 49% said that they had an increase in visitors in 2017. High percentage of out-of-province international visitors are already coming here with a high value and high spend. So even though those numbers are relatively low, they actually do stack up well against the provincial numbers, and they're higher than a lot of municipalities would be for international and further out visitors. So you're already getting a number of high value spenders. And 51% had revenue increases of the businesses said they had revenue increases in 2017. So some weaknesses that we thought of finding out from the studies: hard to find and recruit, retain quality staff. That, at least amongst the business owners, seems to be a theme. 31% of their businesses did have a decrease in revenue in 2017. While majority did increase, there was still a significant minority decreasing. 5 businesses are considering closing in 2018, and we will or have already followed up with those businesses to see if there was anything we could do to help retain those businesses. The majority of visitation traffic is to the Royal Trail Museum, but is not currently circulating to other locations and attractions in the Drumheller area, at least not all of it anyway. So that brings us to some opportunities. Businesses are willing to work with the town and the travel Drumheller on promotional pieces. There's an opportunity to produce some pieces and get buy-in from the businesses. Conversion of Royal Trail visitors to spend time and money in other Drumheller area attractions, F&B, and retail. That's something that we could work on as an opportunity. Increase the quality of employees through customer service training, which is something that our division is looking at, bringing back Alberta's best, and we may call it something else, but some of you will recognize that from days of old, and that is currently in the works. 59% of businesses did expect an increase in revenues this year. 44% of the businesses were considering expansion, and business indicated a slight increase in jobs for 2018. So hiring must have gone up at least a little bit. Some threats, of course, always economic downturn, further rises in minimum wage, higher costs, taxes, etc. You have a mature industry, which represents potential businesses that are looking to retire or sell, so that needs to be addressed within your business community. Succession planning of some means or sort, so that you don't just have people coming to the end. And businesses are not necessarily easy to sell sometimes. And if they get to the end and they decide to sell it, and often what happens is people just close because they get tired of waiting to sell and they haven't done the planning. So that's something that we'll have to address within the local business. Weak attendance obviously is a risk because those anchor tenants are so important, and lack of staff resulting in businesses not being able to adequately service current customers or be able to expand. So out of the project, the last piece is the reflection piece, and we're planning to put on a facilitated session with business and political leaders here in Drumheller sometime, hopefully in November, but we're trying to arrange currently a facilitator, and those dates will depend upon the availability of you guys plus the facilitator. So that brings me to the end of the presentation. Do you have any questions?
Thank you. That was very informative and even better the second time around. So, questions? Lisa?
More a comment than anything. I found it quite fascinating to see some of the juxtaposition in regards to profits, increase in profits compared to foot traffic, or decrease in profits compared to foot traffic. So that was kind of interesting. I'd be curious to see if that had some correlation with minimum wage, or if you found that in some of your study.
So we didn't cover that particularly in the study, but I have background in business coaching, and sometimes initially when revenues go up, your profits can go down because there's additional costs, whether that be in employment costs or additional input costs of various sorts. Interestingly enough, most entrepreneurs are sometimes miss the bottom line. They concentrate on the top line. They call that your bragging rights. My top line increased, and so I'm happy to tell the accountant comes back and says, well, actually you made less money. And so that is an issue which can be addressed with our business. So we have business coaches within tourism, and so we do sometimes coach operators on watching costs and making sure that you get that right balance.
Awesome. And just a comment on that Alberta Best. Going to school for a couple of years up at Moore, and they actually taught that in health class. So it was mandatory for every student in class to be taught Alberta Best. So I think it went a long ways for a certain generation. But I'm quite excited actually to sit down in November to discuss this further and have everybody at the table. So, and great work. Thanks, guys.
Anybody else? Jay?
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you very much for being here today, Bruce. I think that there's no shortage in the number of times where we should take the opportunity to talk to our public about the importance of tourism here. It's a subject that community leaders have long regarded as an imperative part, a true focus of our local economy. But I think everybody in town needs to see that video a couple of times. Phrases like a key to economic diversification and you know, to understand the true breadth and scope of the visitor economy. Because often, in my experience in this community, while it may be small, it's certainly loud. Any sort of emphasis placed on tourism is met with some kind of derision, as though somehow supporting the traveling public is somehow beneath us. On the contrary, it is a linchpin to this community continuing to thrive, and so I have a couple of questions. One, how often is the timber process going to be repeated? How often could we expect to be updated on information like this?
So the Tiber project, the way that it works is a partnership with us and with the local municipality and partners. But one of the cool things about the way it works now is Julia and her and Heather and our partners now know how to do this project and could potentially repeat it before and without even us, because they've been through a lot of the groundwork, and so that piece of it could be done without us. Having said that, we'd be happy to come back and see what progress there was made in a few years. We're hoping that out of the facilitated session that there will come a series of actions that Alberta Culture and Tourism would be able to help support in some way, shape, or form. Some of those actions, of course, would happen at the local level. And so, you know, in a few years' time, we would be happy to come back and see what is the change, what is the difference on the Tiber project. But from a business retention and expansion point of view, Julia now has basically our toolkit and could repeat that at any time that she had the resources and the inclination to do so.
I think it's really important to emphasize to our residents that you know, I think most of them might guess that we have 20 or 30 tourism-related businesses in town, not 108, and not 75% of those saying that the majority of their business comes from tourism. That's information that I don't think that too many of the regular public not involved in the tourism industry would have any sense of. Everyone understands the behemoths. Everyone understands those anchor tenants, to use mall terminology like you were referring to, of the Royal Tyrrell and the Atlas Coal Mine, et cetera. But the overall impact that has on our community, I don't think is particularly well known. So thank you for bringing it fresh. I think it was Mark Twain who popularized the lies, damn lies, and statistics. So I always have to measure some of it, because you know, when you talk about 5 businesses thinking about closing, that's something that, of course, you know, strikes right at the heart of everybody around this table. But again, 2 of those 5 is because the owner's considering retiring. You had almost 40%, and there's only 5 of those 80 some odd businesses in the first place. 39% of the respondents said the reason why would be because they were considering retirement. That would be 2 out of 5. And so it's not as though we have an epidemic to solve in those areas. But at the same time, you're absolutely right. I've always been blown away by the absence of succession planning. The operators that I've seen close during the 20 years I've been in this community, who seem to have a solid business, seem to have positive cash flow, and yet, even though I wouldn't have said from the outside, they are the business, so there's nothing to sell. The number of times that we've seen someone close up completely instead of follow a succession planning model is a true shame in this community. So if there is some coaching opportunities in that area for this community to focus on, I would love to see us pour some resources behind that.
Yeah, when you're out talking, yeah, a good point on the succession planning, and I just want to back up and echo your comment on the importance of tourism. And I think sometimes people don't realize that there's anything beyond entry-level jobs.
Right.
And even with those entry-level jobs, if you think about it, a lot of them might have been your very first job and got you into the workforce and got you trained on how to work in the workforce. Tourism also tends to employ a lot of underrepresented people, immigrants, women, youth, those kinds of things, and give them a start and a chance. And so, you know, and it's not that it ends there. There's everything in tourism from, you know, very entry level to, you know, executive level jobs. It's just, you know, what most people see is the frontline worker, and so that's what they think is tourism.
And that's why I'd like to see that video, a link to that video on our website, because it does a fantastic job of showing the cycle of the economy. I think it even used the phrase, for every job that you see, there are hundreds that you don't, that are impacted by tourism. Thanks again.
Thanks, Jay. Anybody else? Lisa?
One quick one. So you kind of mentioned about coaching or mentoring businesses. How do businesses get in contact with you to be able to access that?
You can get a hold of Julia for starters. She has our numbers. We're also on the the alberta.ca website under culture and tourism is our tourism entrepreneurship programs, which includes startup programs and our business mentoring programs. We're also working on some other new programs that hopefully will get launched this year that will address some of these other issues. Of course, I can't elaborate until the minister announces those programs, but we're hoping that over time that we'll be able to cover off most of those issues either directly or through our business coaching, which Cody is our business coach for the area. So,
Perfect. Thank you.
Anybody else? This might be something Tony with Community Futures working to jointly with that would be something to look at. Anyways, I don't know if I missed it, but was there any discussion or questions regarding shoulder season?
So seasonal diversification could be one of those issues that you choose to want to address in the reflection piece, because you do have a fair concentration, like a lot of tourism businesses, on the summer season as it stands. There are ways to diversify shoulder seasons that involve attracting a different type of visitor, you know, less family orientated, but more you know, couples and that kind of thing. And as you also diversify your offerings here in town, that starts to attract those people as well. So it all kind of goes hand in hand, and that's something certainly we could talk about during the facilitated session.
Anybody else? Okay, well, thank you so much, Bruce, Lexi, Cody. Appreciate you guys coming down. And thank you. We look forward to hearing from you in November. Okay, we'll move on and give you guys a moment to clear out and the library to set up. So we'll just give Vanessa a moment to get set up.
Thank you. Chinese, high quality writing assurance. Oh, thank you. Yes, please. Oops, can't find you. There we go. Scare me, Linda.
I know. Okay. The chair's all warm from the sun.
Sorry?
The chair's all warm from the sun.
Is this, the dinosaur's head is bigger, eh?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
I'm pretty sure I changed this one. I'm pretty sure I changed this one.
Yes, I think so. I don't have.
I don't know. There are multiple versions now.
I know. Exactly.
It will get finalized. I'm pretty sure this is with the bigger head, yes.
No.
Yeah, because the tip of the beak comes out past the
M.
into the M.
Oh, yes. I like that. Although I did like my little Wi-Fi one better.
I should have brought my water with me.
Sorry?
I said I should have brought my water with me.
Yeah, I'm feeling so parched these days.
This is on, isn't it? It's red. The light is on, but I can't hear me.
Okay, so ladies, table's all yours. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having us. So my name is Vanessa Page. I'm the board chair of the Drumheller Public Library. This is Emily Hollingshead. She is the director of the library. And over here we have a staff member and 2 board members and a society member. So we are very well represented today. We're going to talk to you a little bit about what the library has been up to and what our plan is for the next 5 years, because we're working on some super exciting things ahead of our centennial, and give you like a sneak peek of our budget for next year. Okay, so our agenda, kind of talked about it. We'll talk about programming, services and collections, the community, the library and gallery spaces, and then the future, the next 5 years in terms of space, community, information, and the budget. Okay, I'm not going to read this all to you. You all have had this information already. So in 2017, we ran almost 400 program sessions that served about 3,000 children. This includes summer programming, story time throughout the year. Our physical materials, so books, DVDs, increased about 20%, digital resources 35%, and a lot more people, about a third more people, used the public computers in 2018 than they did in 2017. We started a new one-on-one tech tutoring service that has served about 30 people, and we've received money for entrepreneurship and science collections. Okay. Library cards, this was our big thing last year. We decided to do free library cards for a 1-month trial, and we got about 34% increase over the number of people who ordinarily would have signed up for library cards. So the society funded this, and then they were generous enough to increase their funding for another 6 months. Our 2019, 20, and 21 budget do have free library cards. So this is something that we are committing to doing because it was such a success. What else? Okay. We're present in schools as much as possible, and so we've previously attended play schools and daycares and brought programming to them, and have gone to Green Tree and St. Anthony's schools to promote our summer programming. This year, we are doing a couple of new things, but basically we are going to branch out. And so our library will also be helping Green Tree Public School's library. And that's, how do I explain it without getting too detailed? Sorry. Basically, we're branching out. We're not going to be just the Drumheller Public Library in the BCF. We will be elsewhere in the community, and this is part of our sort of Drumheller connected plan for the future. Other activities that we are partnering with: Trail of Trees, Family Fun Events, the Comic Expo, Alberta Culture Days, and FCSS, Camp BCF, Community Futures, etc. Okay. We have run out of room in the library. Emily was actually just talking about how this morning she received a number of phone calls asking to book our programming room, and we're trying to say yes to everything, and it's causing a lot of issues in the library just because it's becoming a very busy place. There's lots of people in the library at all times, and they're all doing different things. The noise levels are, not optimal for everybody's needs, and so we have some plans to deal with that. Art gallery is popular, and we actually expanded the gallery. Now we have paintings from the community in the library itself, not just in the Western GM gallery. Okay, I think we can, yeah. Okay, so that is what we have been doing, and we've been doing it very well. And we decided that we needed to change because it is, we are coming up to 100 years, and we wanted to have a more extraordinary library. We wanted a better, more jazzy place to be. So what we did, we looked at namely April's FCSS community survey, where she asked the community what it wanted. We looked at surveys about literacy levels in the town, and we looked at the report from the Early Childhood Development Coalition. And so we learned a couple things. We learned that youth feel lost in Drumheller. We learned that people feel alone, and we learned that residents feel that they're missing that sense of community. And so we decided, let's make it the library. So our library, we have a new little logo, we have a new tagline, it's Drumheller Connected, and we are going to try to be the community hub for Drumheller in the next 5 years. That's our plan. So what do we have to do? A lot of things. These are the very broad strokes of what we have to do. The first thing we will do is revise our space to create a larger youth space in the building, which will allow for additional programming and also a quiet space for patrons. So our idea is when you first come into the library, that's more the quiet space, and then the kids and the teenagers are in the back being noisy, and that's all right. Kids can be noisy, they will be anyway, but let's give them a space. So we've been talking with FCSS about how exactly we can develop our space. I'm sure you're aware, April has been asking for a place in town where youth can hang out. And so we said we have some new space in our library redesign. So we're working with her with that, improving the accessibility of the library and finding ways to extend hours of service to library users. So this is our plan. Thank you, Christine. Basically, I don't have a pointer. Over here on the right-hand side, this is where the teens, this is where the teen space is going to be, the youth area. And in order to accommodate that, we're basically moving bookshelves. That's not anything dramatic. The middle programming room up there at the top, that's currently offices, and so our plan is to move the offices into the staff workroom where they logically would go. And then our old teen space will become a study and quiet space, depending on what we can feasibly do in terms of money, in terms of our abilities to construct in the BCF. That would either be one space with a sort of removable sliding wall to make it into two spaces, or two separate spaces. More public computers right in the middle, because we found that the computers are extremely busy, extremely popular, and then a circulation desk that is closer to the door. Yeah. So that's our new space. Community. We plan to increase the library's involvement in community events, to increase these in terms of diversity. Little free libraries throughout Drumheller, expanding into school libraries, and making it easier for Drumheller residents to get involved in the community. And then information, we're going to update and modernize, if you will, our collections. So we're going to make the books easier to find. It won't necessarily be Dewey Decimal System where you walk in and there's a bunch of numbers and you have to go find a string of numbers. The program we're looking at, it's more like bookstore feel. So you walk in, I want a book on cooking, I want a biography, I want a book on personal finance. Increased programming that'll include life skills and civic engagement focused events, and having online catalog tools to help find community organizations. Oh, let's go back. Okay, so, and you're all thinking money, money, money. So the beauty of our plan is that it's not a very expensive plan. So reconfiguring the space, we don't estimate it will take more than labor. We have a range of plans from the very, very frugal, we have no money, to yes, we have what we need to get this done, the way we, like our dream plan. We can adjust our staffing levels to accommodate the increases in programming, the community outreach, things like that, and we can modify our focus. So instead of focusing on genealogy programming, we can turn our focus to Adulting 101 programming. How to do your taxes, how to change your oil, things like this, things that people, might be more interested in. So the one thing that we cannot control in the library is staff wages. It's by far our largest cost, and staff have been on not quite a wage freeze, but they haven't had very high increases in the past 3 years. So during our last major budget cycle, we knew the minimum wage was increasing in Alberta. We didn't know the details of it because it was summer 2015. And so we found ways to try and incentivize and motivate the staff in non-financial ways. The problem that, in hindsight's 2020, is that we have an older group of staff. And so saying you can have an extra week's vacation to somebody who's only working 20 hours a week because she's retired and 70 isn't going to incentivize this person, right? They want an increase in wages. So we actually lost a number of staff over the past 3 years, a number of long-term staff. We don't want to do that anymore. In our package to you, we have like a report on our staff. We've got 46 years of library experience, 5 bachelor's degrees, 5 master's degrees with our current staff. We don't want to lose these people. We need to raise wages. That's just, it needs to be done. Our library has grown. We've been doing more things. We have big plans for the future of the library, and we can't pay them minimum wage. A lot of the staff are within $1 or $2 of current, or of what will be minimum wage in October. So, yeah. All right, what do we want? Onto the budget. Our budget, if you've got this from your package, we want just shy of $200,000 in 2019, 2020, 2021. So not $200,000 to make this happen. It's like $200,000 to run the library, including this. This is a jump. It's about a 10% jump from our 2017 numbers. We currently are on track to get about 177 from the town of Drumheller, and now we're looking for 197. Some highlights sort of from the budget is that although this is a big jump, it's only a 5% increase from what we were getting in 2016 because the 2017 and 18 budgets were put in Emily's hands. She created them. She said, this is what I need. Stop, and asked the board basically, stop telling me what I'm getting. I will tell you what I want. And so because of that, we had decreased our budget significantly in 2017 and 18. And now we're back up there to 2016 numbers, but only slightly, so 5% since 2016. In our current budget, we are diversifying our income, so we aren't necessarily relying on the town of Drumheller as much as we have been in the past. So projected revenue streams are asking the counties to contribute some money. And a partnership with Green Tree, with Golden Hill School Division for our plan to be in their library, right? Like there's no sense in going to the Green Tree Library if we're not being compensated for it in some ways. Another way we are actively building a reserve fund. So previously our sort of savings account was whatever money we have left at the end of the year, we're just going to put it in savings. Now we're paying ourselves first and saying, you know, we are going to actively save this money. And then library cards. I already mentioned library cards, so there we go. The planned changes to the library space will have, I spoke about this, very little financial cost or costs that have already been budgeted into our budget / using our reserve payments. And in terms of staff compensation, we're being a lot more flexible, so we're offering things like paid volunteer time and preventative health days, along with a slight increase in wages. Is that it?
The increased evening hours on Monday and Friday.
Oh yes, thank you, Emily. And increasing evening hours on Mondays and Fridays. So currently, we are open until 8 o'clock on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursdays. Now our plan is to be open till 8 o'clock on Mondays and Fridays as well. We'll still be closed on Sundays. Sorry? That costs more than this. We're working on it. And still be closed on Sundays and open on Saturday. Okay.
Very good presentation. Okay, Council, Christine.
Excellent job. Thank you guys so much for letting me be involved with it. It's awesome sitting on the board with you. I really want to drive forward that what you guys are planning on doing is actually going to solve so many issues that we are faced with all the time about having that central hub, having something for the youth, having basically that place where we can all connect. Mm-hmm. And the other exciting part is the rooms, the spaces that we can offer people those programs and things that they need in our community. And I'm pumped. I think this is going to be so awesome. Good job.
Thank you. Can I speak to that? Sorry.
Yeah, sure.
So one of the things that I forgot to mention is that with having the increased programming rooms, we will be able to offer more programming, right? It won't be a choice of, well, do we have, the children in the workspace and we tell another organization, I'm sorry, you have to sit at a table out in public, or do we say yes to both and we try to, work it out? Like, what can we do? We can say yes to a lot more, and we can go after more, I won't call it business, but more organizations and say, yes, you can come to the library and sit in a nice private room that is accessible to the public and everybody.
Tony?
Yeah, very good presentation. I was kind of impressed on the innovation and the future and the vision that you see going forward there. Couple of budget questions though. The library cards that were free now, any idea the revenue that was given up?
Our previous library card revenue is around $10,000. So we 34% increase, about 14,000.
So that's 10 of the revenue you're trying to find somewhere else then by carrying it forward? Okay. And the the county's participation, innovative, any reception to that?
So this is something that I've heard about through the Strathmore Library. This is something that they've been doing with Wheatland County for quite a while. They send statistics of how many of their registered patrons are actually living in Wheatland County. And Wheatland County returns $15 per patron each year. So what we are hoping to do is follow that model. Based on Marigold's presentation a few weeks ago here, it sounds like most of our county patrons are actually in Wheatland County. So the majority of what we would be looking for is from a county that's already accustomed to the system, and hopefully positive to our request.
Yeah. Yeah, I wouldn't argue that some of the patrons are from the outside of the town of Drumheller, and there's opportunity there. Is that how you kind of arrive at your projected 4,500 in revenue based on that?
That's right, according to the number of patrons that we have currently recorded as county residents.
Okay, thanks.
Jay?
Thank you, Your Worship. So let me preface my questions by always reminding, big fan, have me at hello. Even though my wife seems to single-handedly keep Kobo in business, we have been supporters of the library for the entire time that we've lived in this community. And we do provide 2/3 of your funding, so you have every right to come here and ask about it. One of the things that, though, I needed to see on the report and didn't, so I have to ask this question, is the 2018 numbers were not provided along with them. So the 23,000 in new ask, is that 100% staffing related, or were there other categories?
Do you have those?
The majority of the increase is from, or is in the salaries. We've actually gone through our other expenses and found places that we can reduce to minimize what we're requesting from the town. So the increase is about 23,000 overall. More than that is an increase in staff wages, but we're saying, okay, we've been asking for $8,000 for vacation and sick coverage. We've been using an average of 2,500, 3,000. Asking for 8,000 every year is unreasonable. We don't need 8,000. We are looking for things that we have been contracting out that we could do ourselves that would actually be a benefit to the library to do ourselves and cost considerably less. So those are the kinds of things that we've been doing to not just find new revenue sources, but find ways that we can be more responsible with what we already have so that we can put more money into our staff.
So how many staff are there altogether?
We have 9 staff during the school year and 10 during the summer because we have a summer student.
Summer reading program, yeah. And how many of those staff right now, again, first, would be close to receiving minimum wage as their salary?
Almost all. There's probably 60%.
Okay.
Would be at or near minimum wage.
Thank you. The wage issue doesn't concern me, and I mean, this is so long overdue, it's not even funny, in terms of addressing the wage issue at the library. When you were here last year, you'll recall that I wanted to know if there was an economy of scale to be met by participating in our benefits plan. And I understand that hasn't been explored, but I also understand that compared to what you're paying, there might not be a lot of opportunity there for savings. But I would like to see you explore that. On top of it, my biggest concern is that if this wage increase were to occur, there's actually no increase in 2020, 2021 for wages in the budget that you've proposed. It's static at 200,000 for the 3 years that you've recommended. No business plan should look like that. Every person who works connected to the Town of Drumheller should be expecting a cost of living increase on an annual basis as the minimum expectation for their salaries. I would love to see you go back to the drawing board and your business plan include our current collective bargaining sits around 2%. I don't know what the next one will be, and that's going to happen this year, Barb. But the idea that even if we were to finally right the ship even ever so mildly at $1.50 an hour, that then it stays static for the remainder of the budget cycle, I'm not sure would have the impact that we'd hope it would be on the staff, just because they got a relatively well, overdue but a decent sized increase in their hourly wage. If it was then stuck for a 3-year cycle, I'm not sure it will have the overall incentive response that you wanted to have. So I'd love to see you factor that part in. I'm not concerned about the expenses. I've always felt like the library runs on a shoestring. I mean, when you look at the expenses side, taking out salaries, it costs more to run my small business than it does to run the library. For the number of people that you serve, that's incredible. You should absolutely be proud of what you're doing. There's absolutely nothing wrong with the ask. You know that the business cycle around here is we've yet to even begin to do budget deliberations at the council level. I'm sure staff is starting to work on it. And so it'll be some time before we'll be able to reach a conclusion for you. And I know it's difficult to come hat in hand, but never be anything other than bold about asking for the proper wages for what should be considered an essential service in a community of our size. And last but not least, a shout out to Melody back there. How long you been working with these yahoos? No? Okay, well, it's nice to see you.
I appreciate what you're saying, because I will say from my own perspective, I have a master's in neuroscience, and I make, I think, $13.50 an hour.
Yeah.
Which is less than a lot of teenagers at fast food restaurants. And I really do think we offer a heck of a big service and are expected to do a lot of different things for a really small amount of money.
It's only because I know you that the gallery's not allowed to talk at council, but thanks anyway. I'm only digging it in because I know her. But it's still very valid. But just so you know, when you go around the table, you won't find very many people more highly attuned to what you're speaking to than the elected representatives in front of you who currently make $10.75 an hour. Yeah.
It's generous. Okay, anybody else? Lisa.
I just want to say, correlate to what Christine says, it's amazing to actually see this planned direction of the library. It is such an integral space to our community. Not to mention it's in the hub of our Badlands community facility, so it's nice to see that little bit of fresh air come through those doors. So keep up the good work, and I can fully correlate with what Jay says in regards to the wages. So it is not more well-earned than the board that you guys have accumulated throughout the years. So I used to sit on the board, and I remember it seemed like 5-10 cent wage increase per hour, and I just couldn't fathom it. So good job, and keep going forward.
One more question, if I
Go
could.
ahead.
Sorry, I did forget one thing. Who's booking your large programming space? What kind of, no, I don't mean who's physically doing. What kind of groups are accessing that?
At the moment, we have ParentLink and Family Literacy, of course. We have an addictions group that meets there. We now have the ukulele club in town meeting there on Wednesdays. I was asked today if the local homeschoolers group could come a couple of times a month and use it, which we're very happy to see. The seniors programming that Rose coordinates, and then of course our programming.
And when you can't accommodate someone, you're referring them, of course, to the booking person at the BCF, I'm guessing. I would hope so. The right answer is, of course we will.
The only reason that's not a straight yes is that in some situations we refer them to the BCF before we consider our space because their space is more appropriate than
Gotcha.
ours.
Good answer. Good, good, good. Thank you.
Christine?
Sorry, one thing that we didn't touch on is about how in the future we want to get into more technology and those kind of things like the, yeah.
3D printer in our media room. So we have a enormous television that the Library Society gave us for RISE programming, where people like teleconference in and learn about things. That isn't used as frequently as it could. It sits in the back room, it collects dust, and in the teen space, it could sit there and have video game systems hooked up to it. And you could come over and play PlayStation 4 with your friends, or I don't know what kids play, whatever they play. So there's that, the idea of a 3D printer, the idea of like musical instrument rental. There's lots of programming ideas, lots of little details that we have that Christine obviously knows because she was in all our programming sessions.
Yes.
But yeah, that's one of them.
Yeah, we had found that the direction a lot of European libraries and stuff are taking now is dipping into technology because that's the information sharing that people are now doing more than picking up a book. So really cool.
Anybody else? Okay, I just have a couple quick questions. Are those library boxes you're referring to, are those the ones that are on the street that I sent you a picture of? Thank you. I am so excited about those. I was just in Ottawa, and they're all down their walking path, so it was amazing. Unbelievable how so many people will work with their master's and bachelor's degrees for minimum wage, so hats off to you guys. That's unreal. And I would just like to wonder, and I'm not sure if I should ask this here, but you're talking about artwork and trying to move some of that artwork into the library. What's the chance?
It is already.
Okay, but what's the chance of decorating some of our halls upstairs? Just a plug at the CAO here. You don't have to answer that. I'm not putting you on the spot. And finally, I just want to commend Christine for all the efforts. I know how hard she works on your guys' board. I know how passionate she is, and it's just wonderful to see, one of our representatives be there for you. And I know that drawing is compliments to Christine. So, well done, Christine. So thank you all for that was a great presentation. So any final comments?
One more, Your Worship. If
Go
I
ahead.
could. Just administrative-wise, and certainly everyone should know I'm prefacing this with acknowledging that Rose Polson is most likely to be canonized as a saint, of all the people I know in the world. But at the same time, the BCF design was always peculiar in that one group that was displaced from this location received dedicated space, and that's the pottery group that's in the Badlands Community Facility. There is no other group that has dedicated space in that facility. And I always found it odd, again, displaced since the town hall moved into the Civic Center, that a town employee in no way or shape or form connected to the library has dedicated space inside it. And so as they have to consider their footprint and what they can do inside those walls, doesn't it make sense that we start looking for an alternate location for Rose?
Actually, the agreement with the with the library when we opened the BCF was to provide a dedicated space for the seniors coordinator, and I would think that if we look to move Rose somewhere else, there's a fair bit of comfort, and correct me if I'm wrong, ladies, but there's a fair bit of comfort with visitors to Rose in that area. So if we were to move her somewhere else, it would. My suggestion would still be in the BCF because that's where most people seem comfortable with her. To meet her, we haven't talked about some of the details around workspace and changes and everything, but I think we'll be doing that over the next few months. So, and talk to Rose about it as well.
fully appreciate that perhaps that there's synergies that work with having her in that space as well. But you know, when you're looking at trying to adapt to an ever-changing future, there can't be any sacred cows. So I'm glad that it's open for discussion.
Well done, ladies. Thank you very much, and thank you all for attending and supporting them. That was amazing to see so many people out in our watching us today. So thank you.
All right, thank you.
All right, let's move on to 8.3.1 and Barb.
Oh, thank you, Your Worship. Okay, so the request for a decision before you is a quick. So what I'm seeking actually is a formal motion of council to authorize the write-off of the balance of the tax arrears owing on the 2 roll numbers that were formerly known as the Elks property. So we now do have official title for the property, and the final piece on the accounting side of it is to write off the balance of the arrears. So that totals $70,373.77. However, we do have a $20,000 allowance for doubtful account that was in place as of December 31st, 2017. So the financial impact this year will be an expense to the bad debt of $50,373.77. And that would be everything unless anybody has a question.
Can I get a motion? Lisa?
I move that we authorize a write-off of the tax arrears balance on roll number 01045707 in the amount of $65,149.55 and roll number 01044403 in the amount of $5,226.22.
Seconder? Fred? Comments? All in favor? Carried. Okay, we'll move down to 13.1. So I'm going to go round table. So I'm going to ask each one of you if you got any questions or concerns that you want to bring up. So let's start with you, Jay.
No, ma'am.
Christine? Tony? Lisa?
Well, I got one that I thought at some point in time maybe we could discuss a little bit further in depth. Throughout the years, we've always had a bit of an issue always brought forward in regards to the camping or overnight parking camping at the Walmart parking lot. I noticed in Red Deer when I was there a couple of weekends ago that they actually have a bylaw that dispels that from occurring in their parking lots. So I thought maybe at some point in time it's something we need to look at considering. There are some days there's quite a bit, there's quite a collection at the back of that parking lot.
Comments? Jay?
Certainly nothing wrong with discussing it further. I know how loath you are to place regulations on private property, and that's what we're talking about. So am I. I think, like all things, it would be appropriate for us to ask administration to take a small amount of time to find out about the bylaw in another jurisdiction, and of course to consult quickly with the property owner in question. Certainly not, they're not alone to my knowledge, although certainly it's the most popular location. The same thing occurs, I believe, in the Canadian Tire parking lot on a smaller scale. And so but at some point, given that is actually something that is customary to see at Walmarts across the nation, and certainly true in the South, in the U.S., I know that in all likelihood, if it was actually an issue for the property owner, they'd be asking for some sort of regulation. So if we're really just responding to a desire of the campground owners for us to force some more business their way, we better have a better rationale than that.
Lisa?
And if I might just comment on that, no comment whatsoever from the campground owners. Actually, it was just my own observation. Some days, like last night I drove out there, there was a baby's playpen, a table, a generator, a propane tank all spread out in this back corner. And I'm like, well, maybe perhaps there's something we should start looking at to not necessarily say, no, you can't do it, but maybe impose some sort of regulations as to public for safety, you know, so.
Tony?
I'd be curious as well if Red Deer's got a bylaw in place with respect to the private property, and I guess enforceability always comes into issue if we have a bylaw and can't enforce it. I do believe it is a corporate policy for Walmart to condone that, and I don't know if we'd be interfering with any of that. And like you say, Jay, it's really big in the States. Canadian Tire probably doesn't have a corporate policy, but I know Walmart does. So,
Christine?
Do we have any complaints that call in from the staff or anybody at Walmart, the owners?
What?
Greg?
We've had complaints, but not about the camping, about people that leave vehicles abandoned in the parking lot. But that's extraneous to the camping. That's just abandoned vehicles, and we assist Walmart with that.
Anybody else? Okay, Fred, do you have anything round table? All right, well then, I would just like to make a quick comment to Reality Bites. I must make sure that you pass on the message that I've had wonderful comments about they can hear us, they know what we're saying, they know who's speaking. So whatever you guys have done, keep up the good work, and please pass that on. Thank you. So finally, can I get a motion to go in camera? Lisa, Tony, a second. All in favor? Carried.